On behalf of the San Francisco African American Historical and Cultural Society, our partners and sponsors, welcome to the Society's 2022 Black History Month kickoff program. I'm Al Williams, President of the Society's Board of Directors. The Society was founded in 1955. In 1958, it merged with a local chapter of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which is better known as ASALH, the national group that started the celebration of what is now Black History Month. Thus, the Society became the official sponsor of Black History Month in San Francisco. From the beginning, the Society has always centered its Black History Month activities around the theme established by ASALH. The National 2022 Black History Month theme is Black Health and Wellness. Today's program and other Society programs throughout the month of February will address this theme. We hope you will enjoy and be informed by today's program. As is our custom and tradition, today's program will begin with an invocation. The Reverend Amos C. Brown, Senior Pastor of Third Baptist Church in San Francisco, will provide today's invocation. The invocation will be followed by the singing of the Negro National Anthem by Nate, the Soul Sanger.
And I would hasten to say that it is significant that we have chosen this year as a national theme that of focusing on the health and wellness of this African American community. Need I remind you that history records it, that because of that historic and inhumane Middle Atlantic slave trade, our ancestors were robbed of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And the quality of life was compromised because the way we were treated. We were not even considered human. In fact, the Constitution of this nation defined us at one point as being 3/5 human. Consequently, when this collective body politic treated us as not being human, we got less than quality food, quality health care, quality mental health, and a quality environment to live in. Friends, that is un-American, that is inhumane, and that is the height of egocentrism and selfishness. So that I hope that out of our celebrating this African American History Month, we shall collectively in our city work to correct the age-old historical disparities in health that has caused us to experience hypertension and strokes, double and almost triple in some communities than that of the majority culture. Women disproportionately dying of uterus cancer, breast cancer, and we've been challenged with the age-old peculiar sickness of sickle cell anemia. In addition to that, in too many of our communities, there have been food deserts. We are not eating a healthy diet. Consequently, we ought to be creative and think outside of the box and make sure that we have in our communities stores that will sell us quality food and never, as it has been documented and reported, leftovers. We don't need any more hush puppies thrown at us. In fact, during the days of enslavement, when those who worked in the big house had finished cooking for those enslavers, whatever grease and cornmeal that was left, many times they had to take the cornmeal and grease and make hush puppies to sustain themselves. And then there were times when the dogs would be out barking and they were hungry too. Somebody would throw out a hush puppy and say, "Hush puppy," or "Hush dogs." That says to us, symbolically, in some instances actually, we should stop accepting leftovers, crumbs, and that which others would not want to eat into our bodies. Finally, let me say, health also is maintained by people having a sense of belonging, a sense of belonging. Psychiatrists and psychologists have documented the fact that whenever a group or people feel that they are an invisible people, that they are not connected, that they're not respected and not regarded, they develop mental challenges. And you all have heard, I'm sure, about the post-traumatic stress syndrome. We have too much stress in our communities, from noise, guns, and violence. And many times that violence comes from the tongue, how we talk to each other, and how we treat each other. So what is the answer? We need to work toward creating what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my teacher, envisioned. What was that? The establishment of a beloved community in which we first learn how to reasonably, rationally respect our self-worth. And secondly, it's the obligation of this society to make up for times in which we were wronged, and we receive payback for the times that our watering holes, our community gatherings were destroyed by so-called urban renewal. That was not urban renewal, but it was black removal. And I need not go into detail dealing with the specificities. But in this city and county of San Francisco, we got to do more than just call on God or pray to God. We must work collectively in a responsible, realistic, righteous way to restore the Fillmore and every historical center where African Americans were about significant community engagement, commerce, cultural celebration, and having a place to say, this is ours as sons and daughters of Africa. Let us pray.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoice of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Oh, sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on to victory is what
We will now have greetings from the Mayor of the City and County of San Francisco, the Honorable London Nicole Breed, and the President of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, the Honorable Shamann Walton.
Hi, I'm Mayor London Breed. Thank you for joining us as we kick off Black History Month in San Francisco. This year's theme of Black health and wellness is not just a response to COVID. It's celebrating the Black healthcare workers who have provided culturally competent care for our families for generations. From the Black doctors and nurses in today's hospitals, to the doulas and the healers in the fields when our ancestors were enslaved. It is honoring the leaders who fought to open clinics that served Black people when hospitals would turn us away. It's recognizing the contributions of Black scholars and practitioners like Dr. Carlton Benjamin Goodlett, who was more than just a Black physician in San Francisco. He was a civil rights leader. He was a newspaper publisher. He advocated for Black people and told our stories in our own voice. In celebrating Black History Month this year, we are renewing our commitment to ensure the next generation has equitable access to health and wellness resources, including cancer treatment, nutrition, and preventative care, to mental health, therapy, and mindfulness. As a kid in the Western Addition, we were lucky to have the Maxine Hall Health Center that served our neighborhood with compassion and care. But even today, while we are living in the era of vaccines and testing, there's still a lot of elders in our community who do not trust modern medicine, and with good reason. We all have heard the stories about how Black people were used for cruel experiments under the guise of medicine. That is why it is so critical to create a holistic, inclusive, and Black-led system that can break down the barriers to healthcare for everyone. Programs like the Abundant Birth Project, a project that provides guaranteed income to support Black mothers during pregnancy and after giving birth. Our Dreamkeeper initiative has committed $60 million annually for the Black community of San Francisco, with $14.9 million to expanding and sustaining Black health and wellness programs. I'm excited for a future where everyone has equitable access to healthcare and wellness resources. Thank you to Al Williams and the San Francisco Historical and Cultural Society for helping us host this event today. And thank you for joining us to celebrate and honor the history, health, and lives of Black people in this city.
Good afternoon. This is President of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, Shamann Walton, representing District 10. First of all, I want to start off by saying Happy Black History Month and wishing you many blessings this year of 2022. I also want to thank the San Francisco African American Historical and Cultural Society for always remembering to bring us together as a people to celebrate the contributions of Black people, not only here in San Francisco, but across the country. Each year we come together at City Hall to kick off Black History Month. And as we know, every day is Black History. It is very important to highlight those contributions. It is very important to kick off Black History Month in that fashion, reflective of the city supporting Black people. I also want to take the time to say that my fraternity brother, Carter G. Woodson, started Black History Month, which originally started as Negro History Week, so that we could look at all the things that Black people were doing here in the United States, contributing to the society and making sure that everyone knew and understood Black folks are intelligent, Black folks are human beings, and Black folks are people who need to be celebrated here in this country. So as we come together for another Black History program, unfortunately, we are not able to do this in person again this year. I want everyone to remember your history. Remember that you are great. Remember that you come from greatness, and remember that you are special. Happy Black History Month. And again, I want to thank the San Francisco African American Historical and Cultural Society for bringing us back together.
Thank you, Mayor Breed and Supervisor Walton. The Bay Area Theater Company, BATCO, will now share with us their rendition of I'm Rooting for Everybody Black.
I'm rooting for everybody black. Everybody Black is my hometown team.
Everybody Black dropped the hardest album of the year, Easy. Everybody Black is in the show, so I'm watching.
Everybody Black is in this movie, so I'm watching. Everybody Black boy better tell the truth.
Everybody Black's new book was beautiful. How you don't know about Everybody Black? Everybody Black, mad underrated.
Everybody Black reminds me of someone I know. I love seeing everybody Black succeed. I hope everybody Black get elected.
Everybody Black deserves the promotion more than anybody. I want Everybody Black to find somebody special.
Everybody Black is good people. Everybody Black been through some things. Everybody Black don't get the credit they do.
I met Everybody Black once, and they're super chill and down to earth. I believe in Everybody Black.
There's something about everybody Black.
We now have greetings from the San Francisco assessor, recorder, Joaquin Torres.
Hello, I'm Joaquin Torres, the assessor recorder here in the city and county of San Francisco, wishing all of you a wonderful start to Black History Month. Here in San Francisco, we're grateful for the vital contributions that African Americans have made towards building and strengthening our culture and our economy, and for advancing our pursuit towards a more just and equitable society. From one of San Francisco's founding fathers, William Leedsdorf, to the phenomenal Maya Angelou, to our history-making mayor, London N. Breed, African Americans have elevated San Francisco to world renown. As we reflect on those contributions and those accomplishments, let it fuel our ongoing and collective journey towards justice. As Dr. King said, we are tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all of us indirectly. Let his life, his words, and his actions ground us in our purpose to advance Black health and well-being as we work to close the racial equity gap, as we unite in our fight for voting rights, pay equity, access to excellent health care, and police reform. This work that we do offers tribute to those leaders who've come before us, to those who've laid the path, using a diversity of practices to move our hearts and our minds towards a more humane and just world. Some of them have left us this year. Bell Hooks, Sidney Poitier, Bishop Desmond Tutu. As Maya Angelou said, if you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you're going. Well, the San Francisco African American Historical and Cultural Society, who since 1955 has made sure we know where we come from and continues to lead the effort in highlighting and celebrating African Americans in the Bay Area through one of the oldest collections of art, writings, and recordings. So to you, in appreciation for your work to keep these traditions of Black History Month alive and present, and to preserve the rich history of African American culture in San Francisco, I'm so pleased to be able to present to you a certificate of honor to thank you for your service to the people of our city. Happy Black History Month, everyone.
Thank you, Assessor Torres. It is now my honor to briefly introduce today's keynote speaker, Dr. Jonathan Butler. Dr. Butler is a faith leader and community activist. He's a postdoctorate fellow at the University of California, San Francisco, and holds a PhD degree in medical sociology and a Master of Divinity in religion and health. He's a social epidemiologist and minister with interest in the role of religion, childhood experiences, and psychological stress on health outcomes. Dr. Butler is also the executive director of the San Francisco African American Faith-Based Coalition, which seeks to address food security in San Francisco and whose mission is to mobilize the city and its resources to eliminate health disparities and inequities in the African American community. With that, I give you our keynote speaker, Dr. Jonathan Butler, who will share his thoughts and suggestions on the subject of Black health and wellness.
My name is Dr. Jonathan Butler, and I'm grateful to the San Francisco African American Historical Society for the invitation to speak for this year's Black History Month kickoff in San Francisco. I serve as the executive director for the San Francisco African American Faith-Based Coalition, a coalition of over 21 churches with a mission to eliminate health disparities. I serve as an associate minister at the historic Third Baptist Church and a researcher in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. This year's Black History theme is Black Health and Wellness. And when I think about Black health and wellness, I'm reminded of the Sankofa principle. It symbolizes that taking from the past what is good and bringing it into the present in order to make a positive progress through the benevolent use of knowledge. Sankofa is that word that translates to retrieve and to go back, to get, to return, to fetch, to seek, and to take. And to understand who we are today in terms of our Black health and wellness, we must go back and learn from the history of yesteryear. That's why I am delighted to greet you from the motherland. I'm currently in Accra, Ghana, and I've been able to experience the culture here, taste the food, but to visit the Cape Coast Slave Castle, which has been an overwhelming experience. Just imagine, in that castle, up to 2,000 males, 1,000 female slaves who were shackled and crammed in the castle's dark, poorly ventilated dungeons with no space to lie down and very little light, without water or sanitation. The floor of the dungeon was littered with human waste, and the men were separated from the women, and the captives regularly raped the helpless women. The castle also featured these confinement cells, small, pitch black spaces for prisoners who had revolted or were as seen as rebellious. And once the slaves set foot in the castle, they could spend up to 3 months in captivity. Imagine them in these dungeons, defecating on themselves, standing near corpse, under these dreadful conditions until they were shipped into the New World. And then for them to cross the Atlantic, some being thrown off the ships to come to places like the United States. Africans were then hunted like animals, captured, sold, tortured, and raped. They experienced the worst kind of physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual abuse. And you can imagine how traumatized they were. When slavery was abolished, emancipation was followed by 100 more years of institutionalized racism through the enactment of black codes and Jim Crow laws, convict leasing, domestic terrorism, lynchings. Today, these violations continue, and when combined with the crimes of the past, as Dr. Joy DeGruy states, they result in yet unmeasured injury. So again, to understand where we've come helps us to lay the necessary foundation to ensure that everyone lives a quality and a sustained life for future generations to come. And so first, when we think about Black health and wellness, we have to think not only about what we eat, how often we exercise, how often we get the sleep that we need, but we must understand the stressors and traumas and how they are measured comprehensively. We don't only just experience racism, discrimination, but there's financial stress and work stress and the work-family spillover type of stress, the neighborhood stress. All those stressors combined has damaging impacts on our physical and mental health. Blacks especially are additionally harmed by this racism and discrimination. And these stressors proliferate over the life course and across generations, and it widens this health gap between the advantaged and disadvantaged group members. So to address these types of health inequities, we must focus on the structural conditions that put people at risk for these stressors. We should focus on programs and policies at all levels that address these social conditions. Now let's look at this stress phenomena, this trauma, a little deeper. What we often mean by stress is being stressed out, feeling overwhelmed, out of control, exhausted, anxious, frustrated, angry. And what happens to us when we feel these types of stressors? Well, we don't get enough sleep. We eat too much of the wrong things. We drink excessively. We smoke. We neglect this regular and moderate exercise that can help to reduce these stressors. And our perception of these stressors is influenced by our experiences, our genetics, our behavior. And when the brain perceives and experiences stressors, there's certain physiologic and behavioral responses that are initiating, leading to this allostatic load. And this allostatic load is simply this wear and tear of our body throughout our lifetime that is accumulated as an individual from childhood all the way to the adult. And this type of wear and tear of our body is very harmful to our health. That's why we experience many cases of diabetes and hypertension and obesity. But it's the racism and the discrimination that is correlated with this substandard employment, housing, education, income, access to health services that is associated with risks that include occupational hazards, exposure to toxic substances and allergens in the home, and low quality schooling and lack of availability of healthy foods, easy access to illicit drugs and alcohol, violent neighborhoods, and environmental exposures. So these daily stressful events of living in poverty, racism, oppression, inequality, sexism, classism, causes for us to come together and advocate for what it is that we desire. We have to, as a people, deal with damaged, fragmented, disrupted social relations, social networks, and infrastructure of support. We have to deal with a low sense of collective political and social efficacy. We have to deal with an elevation of destructive social norms, promoting violence and unhealthy behaviors over. And so what do we need to advocate for? We need sustainable community economic development. We need restorative justice. We need healing circles. We need to reclaim and improve our public spaces that have often been stolen from us, even in places like Ghana. We need to advocate for shifting community norms and enhance the social connections and networks that we've had before. We need to rebuild intergenerational connections and relationships and organize and promote positive community activity and provide more of a voice, an element of power for community folks around shifting and changing the environment as well as our structural factors. We need to create safe public spaces through improvement in our built environment by addressing parks and housing quality and transportation. Reclaim and improve our public spaces. We have experienced this community level trauma. And it is not just the aggregate of individuals in a neighborhood who have experienced trauma from exposures to violence, but there are manifestations or symptoms of community trauma. Community trauma is cumulative and synergistic impact of regular incidents of interpersonal violence, historical and intergenerational violence, and continual exposures to structural violence. And so for us to become a people who have a good quality life, for us to address this issue of creating a healthy community, we must come together and we must demand what was stolen from us. I'd like to end my conversation with a statement about our faith. A connection to faith has long been recognized as having a deeply profound impact on our social and emotional well-being. And throughout history, a connection to a higher power has been the cornerstone of resilience and empowerment that has sustained generations of individuals from the African diaspora. Trauma and health disparities faced both historically and currently by Africans and African Americans contribute to the enduring legacy of faith and spirituality. To this day, it remains a powerful source of hope for the community. When we think about health and wellness, we think about also bringing us together through our faith.
Thank you, Dr. Butler, for those inspiring, informative, and thought-provoking remarks on the 2020 Black History Month theme, Black Health and Wellness. You've certainly given us a great deal to think about and to reflect on in the days and months ahead. Once again, we now go to some more performances by Batco.
walk in liberty. I believe it, I receive it, I find freedom. Give my freedom. I won't turn back, no matter the state I'm in. We will be free to walk in liberty. I believe it, I receive it, I will find my freedom.
Thank you, Batco, for another great performance. We hope you've enjoyed today's program. We look forward to seeing you at our Genealogy Resources for African Americans program on February 12th and other programs on February 19th and 26th. Last but certainly not least, we'd like to thank our sponsors and everyone whose support made this program and all of our programs possible. We look forward to seeing you in person or virtually at these upcoming programs. Until then, please stay safe. Now, I leave you with a closing performance by the singer Rebel.
Have been lost before, so I know how you feel. You are never alone. I am here to guide you through, 'cause the pain is a burden on its own. Let's pick up the pieces so you can carry on. Life is full of ups and downs. You've come too far to give up now. When it's rough, know that I am here. I'll help you face all your fears. Why? 'Cause the pain you feel is a burden on its own. Let's pick up the pieces so you can carry on. Hey, and I swear what you're going through. I'm an outcast too. Oh, you can overcome self-hatred and abuse. It's not your fault, just be yours. 'Cause the pain you feel is a burden on its own. Just pick up the pieces so you can carry on. This is my favorite part. You will make it out of this. I know from my own experience. Oh, it's not your time. Don't throw in the towel. You're almost there. Victory's within a mile. 'Cause the pain you feel is a burden on its own. Let's pick up the pieces so you can